Okay, we are live here with Rally Nation Live.
Yes, we're at the Mike Nagle Regional Rally. We're out on the Dalles Mountain stage. This is the first running of the Dalles Mountain stage. We're about 3/4 of the way through the running here. We just had Lawrence Region go by. We got Jeff Thomas to be come by here. There we go. GPS Motorsports.
Good to see Jeff Thomas out here. He's got a nice line. He looks to be one of the faster front-wheel drives through this section.
Also one of the supporters of this event, so thank you very much to them. Yeah, you know, we've been seeing some of the cars go through here, and you can already see the line is cleaning up pretty good, and really there hasn't been a whole ton of cars.
And in fact, the road's gotten swept like quite a bit. Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see that some of the faster cars, the first ones that came through here, were actually probably not the fastest on this particular stage, but we could see by the second running that they pick up some speed, as we've seen from some of the later competitors.
So Seth, you and I were talking earlier about about this particular piece of road and how they come out of the corner at the top of the hill here. And when we came down, just driving down, it's really rough up there. Really and then rough. Down here, you can tell it's definitely a little bit smoother. How would you approach coming into this section, especially coming off something so rough, and then you got this kind of sweeper here, but then it really kind of straightens out?
Well, what I've noticed and what I think we're starting to see here is that what they're sweeping away is a lot of the smooth stuff on the top, and it's getting down to some of the harder, almost tarmac-like traction. And what's happening is that these competitors are coming in and they're braking, and the brakes kind of hooking them towards the right, and they basically have to end up setting up a Scandinavian flick. And because of that, they're losing some speed through the corner, and sometimes the competitors that are actually a bit slower, they're actually coming out of the corner a bit faster, and coming out of the corner as fast as possible is really the whole point of this.
But yet they were coming a little too fast. We saw, if we pan over to the longer section here, we could see as they're trying to make a little cut into that corner there, we could see them, they were going actually a little wide and actually having to correct.
Got David coming through here. Yeah, as you can see, he took it a little bit slower coming down the hill, was able to get a really nice exit on that corner, and I think because of that, you got a pretty long straightaway coming out of this corner, but the downhill by itself is not really where you're going to make up time.
I must say, this is one of the most beautiful views you can get in all of rallying. Look at how far we can see these cars in the distance. I mean, you've got the mountains in the background, you've got, just seeing them from, it must be 2 miles of cars that we can see as they come in and out of frame down there. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see, I'm sure, on the live feed, but all the way down there, there's a ranch, and we can actually still see the cars going around those bends down there. And yeah, there's not many places in rally, in the entire rally scene in North America, let alone the world, you really get these kind of views.
So, next competitor coming along here. That should be Jennifer King. What, did we hear it? Maybe?
It's maybe not the loudest. The rear-wheel drive car here. Slow, but as I said, with a nice exit from the corner. And we see competitors that do take that slower approach, really getting a lot of speed on that straightaway.
So Jennifer King and Susan Zukowski, now this is their first time ever doing Oregon Trail. Now, you've been on this stage before, Seth. What was it like your first time experiencing Dalles Mountain?
Well, it looks like we got another car coming up here. But the first time, I can certainly say, is it's a lot. You got a lot of exposure here. So Jason Mue, well, I'm not sure if it's his first time, but it definitely doesn't look like it because he is moving. In fact, he's catching up to Jennifer King.
Yeah, I mean, this is, on these longer stages, sometimes you can even actually catch another competitor, especially as you get closer to the end.
And I'd say, considering that we're only about 5 miles in where we're stationed at, it's actually, for cars that are catching up, that's actually a pretty short window to catch up on. On the longer stages, 10 miles, 12 miles, which there aren't many in rally, but the ones that we do have that are that length, it is quite a bit easier to catch up on. But for only at the 5 mile mark on such a tight stage, it's actually pretty surprising to see people catching up on others.
So you were talking before about your first time doing the stage being a lot. So what do you mean by that? Is it just the fact that it's just that technical, that many triple caution exposures, or what was it?
I mean, there's a combination of things. Dalles Mountain Down is certainly a unique stage. especially within the Oregon Trail Rally, let alone the West Coast here. And you start out sort of heading towards the river gorge, and at first it's quite wide open. You can get some speed going, and then you really have to dial it back quite quickly as you come into this exposure over the Columbia River Gorge. And from there, you are basically straddling the ridge line going across, and the terrain continues to get rougher and tighter. It opens up near the end as roughly starting from where we're at and going towards the ranch. And by that point, it's pretty open, but that first part, it's definitely a shock when you come out of that triple caution exposure.
So yeah, so one thing I noticed doing recce on this one is, you know, how much it changes. Like you said, it definitely gets faster. It also gets smoother farther down. Up at the top, there's a lot of big rocks and stuff like that for these competitors to watch out for.
Absolutely. Next car coming through. Cooper Anderson. Keeping it nice and tidy. Taking a nice line out. Going to pick up some speed on the straightaway. Coming down to another braking zone.
Ooh, got
car coming up close.
Brian Heidsieck.
Taking a similar line, but as I've said before, and I think Brian really portrays what I was trying to explain, is that a little bit of a slower line coming down the hill, but powering out on the exit, especially in a rear-wheel drive car. Great example of using that straightaway to his advantage. Now I imagine, and it will be hard to see, but as we can see way down there, that Brian Heidsieck really is not far behind.
Yeah, I think he's going to catch him here, definitely before the end of the stage. I guess like by the time they get up to the ranch up there.
Yeah, we can see him dotting in and out behind the trees and the cliffside there. I'd imagine Heidsieck's maybe about 10 seconds behind.
So you've raced in four-wheel drive. Of course, you know, We got the multiple classes here. Coop's in an NA four-wheel drive, which used to be called Open Light or whatever. So it's usually a lighter chassis versus, you know, you got this rear-wheel drive car. What do you think is going to have the better advantage? I mean, downhill, is power even a thing?
You know, it's a case of downhill, definitely power is not as much of a thing, but the section that we're coming from, where we're looking at, is definitely a rough section, and all-wheel drive is going to have a bit of an advantage, just with traction. But we got another car coming up here. One Matt Weaver and RC Britt. Another rear-wheel drive here. Nice and tight, but as you were saying, Mike, past a certain point, you know, on the downhill, rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive kind of balances out, but there are some sections, and it's kind of hard to see because at the very start, we're mostly going downhill. But towards the middle point of the stage, past where we're at, it starts to actually go back up again, and I think you can kind of see it on towards the ranch down there, where you actually do have to go back uphill. And the other thing is simply that when you're in a corner, all-wheel drive gives you such a better time of pulling out of the corners. And I will say I do have some experience doing rear-wheel drive. I trained at Dirtfish in rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive as well. And I actually started in rear-wheel drive, but decided to move up to all-wheel drive just because it's a totally different way of approaching the stage, approaching the course as a whole. It is a very different experience, however.
Yeah. Well, one thing you may have noticed is that Mazda that went by didn't sound like a Mazda. It sounded very Subaru-like, and Matt Weaver's got a very unique build in what he calls the Mazda-ru, because that has a Subaru motor inside that Mazda RX-7. So you see it, and then you hear it, and you start questioning yourself.
I'm gonna be honest. I was listening to that, and I was like, you know, something doesn't sound right. I wasn't quite sure it was a Mazda until I saw it. Looks like we got another car coming up here. Moving pretty fast.
Henry and Jack Gilwiles.
See the smoke building. Yeah, taking it nice and slow around the corner. We are starting to see a little bit more dust as it dried out. We were expecting rain today, but apparently that wasn't in the forecast.
Yeah, definitely not much moisture. I think I saw maybe just a couple of drops in my car the whole drive this morning, but as you can see, the skies are definitely clear. There's a little bit of a breeze, not too much, so enough to keep the dust down from, you know, the competitors getting into their visors and whatnot as they're going through. Now, the next stage after this, though, they get into the trees and they get into ravines, and that's where it's going to probably where the dust is going to become more of an issue, and they're going to wish they had rain.
I can absolutely say as a competitor that the dust is always a huge concern, especially here at Oregon. Perhaps one of the worst rallies for dust was actually Idaho for that exact reason. You're mostly just in ravines and in the trees. Luckily, we got the nice wind of the Columbia Gorge here. It's blowing all the dust away, so I'm sure the competitors are going to be happy about that. It's not going to be too much of a concern for them.
So this being the first stage of the rally, what's usually the plan? Is it, take it easy, especially when the first stage is a long stage? So sometimes it's nice, you get a short one, just kind of warms you up. But the longest stage of the rally is the first one to start off with. If you're looking to capture the lead, do you just go flat out from the get-go? Or do you take it a little bit more conservative, see how your car is, get yourself warmed up, and see where the other competitors are around you?
I think it's hard to say because I think all the drivers have different philosophies. I found that usually that first stage, as with most things, is usually the most anxiety-inducing one. And so as you keep on going, you're going to be seeing that drivers probably pick up some more speed, but at the same time, they're going to be making some mistakes that first time around. But we got Jacob Sturgeon coming here with Maryville Plaza. Coming around the bend.
He's got to be nursing something, yeah.
Burgess and Peckham.
Peckham and Burgess, yeah, Dave Peckham.
We may very well see a car getting passed here quite soon. But of course, with that dust, apparently the wind's died down a little bit because it looks like Burgess is getting caught in the dust there.
Yeah, it looks like he's having to power it back just because he can't see. He's getting too close.
And I can certainly say I've passed cars before on stage, and it's with the dust, it's almost impossible. But during the rain, it is a little bit possible, but you really have to be concerned about the well-being of your car.
Well, and the other thing is you got to worry about, well, have you been passed also?
Yes. I have not been passed.
You have not been passed, okay.
Unless I was off the stage already, and then everybody passed me.
So Richard and Laura Nile.
We got Richard Nile and Laura Nile. In fact, I'd say they're actually probably not too far behind their other two competitors that are...
yeah, so there's 1 minute gap between each car. And as you can tell, that was less than a minute between these two. But that's probably because, you end up having Peckham is being held up by Jacob, Jacob Sturgeon. And so it's like kind of cascading effect,
exactly.
Right? So backing up these cars here. Oh, there you go. Hopefully, so what I was wondering is, in that situation, if you are being passed, of course you haven't. So, but, how do you know when that car's behind you? Is your co-driver going to be like looking at your times going, with 1 minute gap, there's got to be somebody's going to be catching us by now?
It's really a case of, I think most drivers block it out. And the co-driver really doesn't have the ability to see behind them. You can't hear anything. I mean, you're pretty isolated within the cockpit of the car. And so it's really up to the driver. And of course, a good driver is going to be focused on the road ahead of them. And so you really can't blame a driver that's in front. You can't blame them with not getting past because it's not something that a driver really wants to think about even.
Well, and there's a little bit more of a story with Jacob Sturgeon, by the way.
Okay.
It's amazing that he's just even here. At Olympus, they had, most people probably watching the stream know Jacob for having the Subaru Brat.
This is correct.
And, we loved having that car out there. It's just such a classic to have rallying. But unfortunately had a really bad accident, just past the water hole that we had over on the Nagle stage at Olympus.
That's that water hole's scary.
All right, pan over and catch another car here.
One of the last cars on the stage, we have Steve Churchill and Dean Nasham. They're in a Metro.
So that Geo Metro's got a story of its own as well. It's been around.
It's still going.
No, we did not switch to slow motion. That is as fast as the car goes. But, it is the starter car. It's been around. There's probably half a dozen competitors that are in higher level cars now that have started in that car.
Absolutely. I think Geo Metro is one of those cars that people don't really think about when they think of rally, but when you've become used to the scene, you really see that car quite a bit because it is that starter car.
And I guess there's something to be said also of taking a car that's less power and just learning how to reach its limit, right?
Absolutely.
And that should help you become even faster once you get into a better car.
That's a popular philosophical debate that I would contend with, but I think there are definitely merits to starting out in different level cars and progressing your way up. And I think you learn different skills no matter what you do.
So we're just going to come back to talking about Jacob real quick. So you were talking about that water crossing at Nagle, and you've been across it too.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's pretty deep, sometimes it's more shallow. This time it wasn't super deep, but there's a lip kind of on that other end of it, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. It's one of those things where you really just gotta hit the water and hope for the best. There's no way you can really plan for it. I mean, you can slow down, but then it's really going to affect your stage time, or you can just go through it, and that's really what I did. And you end up losing complete control of your car for a good 3 seconds, and that's not really something any driver wants to say. But it's just a case of during a water crossing that's all there really is to it.
Yeah, you're just aquaplaning and just along for the ride, aren't you?
Yeah, and by the time you reach the end, you're still spitting out water from your tires, from the engine bay. There's been quite a few competitors who've lost bumpers, radiators, all sorts of things from that water hole. So I'm not surprised that it claimed another car, but it's unfortunate to hear.
Yeah, so anyways, it went off the road, thankfully, all okay, but that unfortunately made the Subaru Brat no longer competable.
Yes.
So they quickly were able to get another car and get it put together, and obviously I think it's got some niggling issues. I think is probably why Jacob's a little slow out there. I mean,
absolutely.
Also, he's a brand new car to him, getting comfortable with it at speed, and so yeah.
I believe we have our last car coming up here, Madeline Tabor and Mark Tabor.
Yes,
the Tabors.
Here comes the Tabor family, the new third generation.
Third generation.
Madeline, I think, is 18 years old. So of the Tabor family, so you got Janice and actually, did we see them? Actually, no, we missed them earlier, but we ended up having Kristen and Janice Tabor. That's don't want to say, but Grandma Janice and Kristen Tabor that were by earlier, and then we have Janice's son Mark and his daughter Madeline in this car, and it's just great to have 3 generations competing. The Tabor family, they've been such huge supporters of rallying for so long in the Northwest, and it's great to see her out here and just giving it a try for the first time. And I'm really excited to see how much faster she is the next run through, because this is literally her first time ever on the first stage.
And forgive me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of the family members started out doing not rally, but doing motorsports in quarter midgets. Looks like sweet.
The kids did, yeah. So that's how Madeline was doing the quarter midgets before she ended up doing this. Now we got Sweep coming through.
Sweep coming through. So that marks the final
for this stage. And huge shout out to our E-Crew and Sweep teams.
I've been pulled out by Sweep many a time. Not really many times. Twice is probably too many.
So they're going to sweep the stage, and while we were talking about this one, now you have the competitor's already on the next one.
Absolutely.
They've already been transiting over, and they're going to be over on Horseshoe Bend, the Great Horseshoe. And before long, that first car will be already headed to service. So
yes.
The great traveling circus that is rallying.
Yep.
And it won't be too much longer, and we'll have cars running here again. We should hope to have that. I'm going to be looking at my schedule here, so sorry, folks. So we should have our next car right about 1:15 is when we should probably have cars running on this specific stage again. But we'll have Chase Hovinga is going to be in service for us and getting us some information from there. So plenty more action to come. All right, so that's going to be it for us from this stage. Again, just make sure you tune into Rally Nation. We'll be live streaming again here soon. Again, we'll get see if we can get any stage times and see the running of this stage.
Yeah, and make sure to tune in definitely, because we'll be able to see the real fast cars come through, especially after a swept stage. Some of the points we've been talking about, and those fast cars, they're going to be even faster throughout the day. We have a third run after that second one. It's going to be later in the day, and by that point, we're going to see some best times of the day for sure.
Well, and just real quick before we close, Derek Nelson, we did see him go through. We watched him pass by us.